Yes. Are we interrupting your nap right now?
Well,
What
if
is going on?
You want to talk about something that I'm like, really?
Well, we could skip over it, but God put it in Scripture for a reason.
Some people thrive on what you want to talk about. And I appreciate those people.
Do you?
No, I do. I
Okay.
really, really do. I think of you. I think of Briggs. I know many people who operate well with systems and structure.
Are you implying that you don't?
Mine is a little creative. And I still manage to accomplish things within my creative.
You have your
systems
own
and I do.
ecosystem of structure or the lack thereof and systems, and it somehow seems to work. I mean, you're still here, right?
It works. It works. I may have to apologize a time or two, but for the most part, I get things done that I say I'm going to get done because it is important to me. And I do have my own system and structure. Now, the only reason that I snore is because I don't understand necessarily the ones that have been created and people
I don't
do
get
well
a lot
with.
of that either. I've had to create my own.
Sure. But
Yeah.
and I do really, though. So when I think of you and Briggs, I really do appreciate people who gravitate toward a system and a structure and it's consistent and they do it well. To me, it's a spectator sport
Okay.
because I
Nice.
don't really understand it.
Well, I know it doesn't sound like super exciting, but it is one of these things I've been thinking about a little bit recently because
Pray tell.
We had and if you're a listener or watcher to the podcast, you know that we had a big life change at the end of August last year and lost our jobs. Life got turned upside down.
I had to move
New
my
systems,
ecosystem.
right? Your ecosystem had to leave one building,
That
move to
was
another place.
Unfortunate.
I'm very, very grateful that I had been doing a lot of freelance work while we were still at our old jobs, and I continued to do a lot of that. But it did mean that I had to find a new location, new places to do a lot of work and stuff. So we ended up putting a studio in our house and an office and a studio there. And it's been great. I love it.
I'm so glad.
It has also created a totally new dynamic.
Oh, sure.
Because we're also a homeschool family.
Uh-huh.
And so everybody is home all the time. I shouldn't say everybody's home all the time. They are busier. My kids and wife are busy running to all sorts of different things.
Yeah.
School related, Bible study related, sports related, right? But they're home when a lot of kids would be at a school building. And I'm now home and am able to be much more involved in the family's life. But that has also made me trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to try and restructure life? What are the new systems and new structures I need to put in place so that everything that ought to be getting done is getting done? So that work gets done when it needs to get done. It'll get done by the deadline, but sometimes it's late at night or ridiculously early in the morning, or, it's not enough this day and way too much that day. And I love the freedom and the flexibility of that. And at the same time, it feels super disorganized.
Especially for you.
Right.
Because you do well with systems and structure. For me, that sounds very normal.
I could kind of see
it's like
that.
You're spectating my world, but it's your world. And that's why it doesn't really work yet in a system.
But we're working it out.
Sure you are. And you will.
Yeah.
You will.
And it's getting better. But I'm still kind of working that out in my head. And then just this past Sunday in our life group, in our Sunday school class, we're reading in the book of Exodus, and we come to Exodus chapter 18. And that's the chapter when Moses' father-in-law brings his wife and his sons back to Moses while he's in the wilderness leading the Israelites. So he had sent them away at some point, He'd been living with the Midianites. He'd been shepherding his father-in-law's flocks for years.
Right.
God appears to him in a burning bush, says, "Go back to Pharaoh and tell him to let my people go." And back in, I think it's Exodus 4, somewhere around verse 20, it talks about how Zipporah, his wife, and his boys went with him back to Egypt,
Sure,
to confront the Pharaoh. And then at some point in time between then and when we encounter Moses in Exodus 18, he had sent his wife and his sons back to be with his father-in-law, with her dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I could just imagine as a guy, life is about to get crazy busy. God has told you all these things that are going to happen. You have an idea that your schedule and the responsibilities and all the stuff is about to go absolutely insane off the charts. And so I could just imagine Moses turning to his wife and saying, it might be a good time to go visit your parents for a little bit.
I'm going to be hanging drywall.
Well, I'm going to be, we're going to be dealing with frogs and darkness and blood and all the things that are about to go down.
Yep.
And, I'm going to be a little busy, and it's going to get a little hairy around here. I want to go visit your dad. Go see your parents. I don't know if that's the way it went down. That's just my imagination.
Right.
How it goes down, right? And so Zipporah and the boys, they go back, and they're with their dad. And now they're out of Egypt, and they're across the Red Sea, and they're in the wilderness. And Moses has not gotten the 10 Commandments yet. That's coming up shortly. But Israel's now in the wilderness, and things have settled down enough that he's like, I need my wife and my boys back.
Yep.
And so Jethro, his father-in-law, brings them into the Israelite camp.
Mm-hmm.
And while he's there, he sees what Moses is doing. And Moses is all day long
everything
listening to the people's disputes. And he's playing judge.
Mm-hmm.
Sun up to sundown. If they're not moving, if they're not doing, God's got them moving somewhere, like Moses is in a sense holding court.
Mm-hmm.
And so Exodus 18, verse 13, Moses takes a seat to hear the people's disputes against each other. They waited before him from morning until evening. And when his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he asked, "What are you really trying to accomplish here? Why are you trying to do all this alone when everyone stands around you from morning till evening?" And then he's like, "Listen, I got some advice. You need to put some systems and structure in place." And with what has been going on in my life as of late, I'm like, oh, this is intriguing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder what the value of systems and structure for Moses' life was going to look like. And you can read through that and see that.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of funny that your initial thought and reaction to that is absolute boredom, sleep, whatever. I mean, is that really your first thought when that comes to mind?
Okay, so there are many people that have put together books and they talk about the systems and the structure. Some people thrive on understanding that. My oldest daughter, is one of those people.
I could see her. Yep.
Oh, she's so good at it. She can help and bring culture and understands personality tests, all the things. I just go, It's the wiring, right? Some things interest others. Some things interest some group of people and not so much others. For this particular topic, I'm the not so much others. But I can glean what Jethro, the advice he was giving them, because it tells us God's a God of order.
Mm-hmm.
It tells us something about the character of God. And so that doesn't bore me. I just have a hard time sometimes understanding the how to execute these systems and structure.
Okay.
Unless you train me. Like if there's a system at work or something that we're going to do this, and then we're going to, like, making the coffee. I got the coffee, right? I know what I'm going to do. I've got an order at home. I've got an order that we do coffee in. That's the kind of thing. If I have an outline to follow, sure, I can do that. But to just sit around and thrive on the conversation of systems and structure, not so much. I'm not your girl on that.
Not for that, no.
Again, some people enjoy it, and I don't mind listening for about 5 minutes. Then I'm going to go watch the game.
Yeah.
Because I just don't have the wherewithal to hang into that conversation. But I do see that it's important. And I know that, I mean, companies run on systems and
Sure.
structure. The world runs to a degree on systems and structure. And here, Israel had to have some systems and structure, or Moses was going to burn out, and then they would have no leader.
Yeah.
So we see how important it is, even to the heart of God.
All right,
He
so
has systems and structure.
there's no Kentucky basketball going on right now, so there's no game for you to run off to. So I'm going to ask, obviously, as you just pointed out, one of the reasons that God may have said, we're going to do this, and I'm going to send Jethro to deliver this message or whatever, is so that Moses didn't burn out,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
What else do you think that God may have said, okay, through Jethro, we need some systems and structure? What do you think maybe some of the other benefits of that could be?
Yeah, I would think it helps others be trained in leadership. It helps them to be able to love and steward people, help them think through their problems, adjudicate if that's their job, that's their role, making sure that the people have a sense of well-being, because that's what leadership is supposed
Mm-hmm.
to do. That's what leadership is supposed to do. And if they don't, then it's what is self-serving about the leadership role. So I wonder if Moses, knowing God had put him in that role, but got so used to being the one that had to answer everything, at some point you shoulder that responsibility and you say, well, then I'm the only one that can do it.
Yeah.
You can't do this without me. And then pride starts to seep in. And we really do think we're the only one that can do it. So if you're training others, then you're letting go of not only some of the responsibility, because Moses ultimately was going to be responsible. God
Sure.
put him in that place.
In that role. Yep.
But others were going to shoulder some of the responsibility now and care for the people and then report back to Moses, because he still had kind of the final say.
I thought that what Jethro suggested was a good idea. Find men above reproach, men of character, men who would not be tempted by bribes, that kind of thing, and put this system in place. Leaders of thousands, hundreds, 50s, and 10s, and let the little cases, whatever, let them be handled by, in a sense, he's setting up the judicial system, the lower courts, and as the bigger issues rise to the top, Moses is, in a sense, like the Supreme Court, as he then hears that and takes that to God, and Moses then relays what God says about this. But you think about the fact, or I was thinking about, you've got some 2 to 3 million people, and how is that message from God to Moses going to reach 2 to 3 million people?
Well, sure.
And Moses there's no sound system. There's no megaphones at this point in time.
There's no phone tree.
There's no phone tree.
No
You can't
texting.
send out the mass text or email or anything like
Social
that,
media.
right?
Yeah.
None of that. And so here we've built, or they put in place this hierarchy where, as God tells Moses, here's my will for Israel, tell the people. Now there's structure in place for the will of God to get down to the people.
Yeah.
And all of his instruction can actually reach everybody who needs to hear that. And as you said, the training up of leadership.
Yeah.
You think of how, there's going to be representatives from each tribe not too long in the distant future who are going to go into the promised land and, check things out, and spies and all the ways that, Israel is going to need to be cared for. And here Jethro, a non-Israelite,
Right.
non-Hebrew, is the one who actually says, hey, Moses, I think we need to put something in place to make this function a little bit better.
The Lord can use everybody, can't he?
Yeah.
And again, you're back to the care for the people. He was putting these leaders in place to care for his people that he'd brought out of slavery. He was also teaching them. They'd been under a pagan culture for so long. They'd been influenced by that pagan culture. And here he calls them out and says, I am your God. I am going to lead you. I'm the fire at night and the cloud by day.
Yeah.
I am who I am, right? What he told Moses. He's got to teach the people that. And without the megaphone or the group text, he has to have other voices where Moses is going to train them. And because they have a love for the people, they're going to go and teach them, as well as listen to their cares and concerns and help bring the peace to all of those millions of people. That's not a one guy job.
No. And you think of the phrase that we often hear, justice delayed is justice denied.
Mm-hmm.
And if Moses is going to be the one court for millions of people, there's no way.
Right.
Justice is not going to happen for people who ought to have justice happen in their lives. And so you think of the fact that here the people are going to get justice. People are going to get the education, teaching, training, instruction from God, all that they're going to need. You're developing the leadership system for the nation of Israel. Man, I was just thinking like how cool it was that God used Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, to deliver this message. Moses was open to receiving it.
True.
And I think that's one of the other things that also kind of stood out to me in this story. Was like, am I open to receiving advice from others? So when somebody, has advice for you, what are the kinds of things that you're looking at as to whether or not you think you might be open to hearing it?
Yeah, that is a really good question. The care, if somebody really has care for me and they're concerned, they want to see less stress, or they want to see me be able to have a system and structure that's going to help facilitate what needs to get done. If it's a genuine, or if it's just dictating, you need to, you should, those words tend to put me on alert. But if it comes from Ben, or if it comes from one of my friends, then I'm going to try to listen a little closer, because I know that at the heart of that, somebody really does care. They're not just trying to tell me, what they think I should do for the sake of them, but it's for the sake of me. So that's one thing. The other thing is, if it's aligning with what the Lord would have me do,
Sure.
then of course you want to hear confirmation. The Lord is directing your path. You want to make sure that is his voice, and he's not going to go counter to this. So if somebody comes to me and says something that is opposed to this, then I know, okay, we can't listen to that, even if it sounds good. You got to stick to what God's given you. So, I think it's a trust issue a lot of times, but God can use anybody.
Right.
Whether Moses trusted Jethro or not, we think he did, but if he didn't, if there was any distrust there, God still used Jethro to be able to speak into Moses' life. And Moses had enough sense from the Lord to listen and to heed the advice. And God can use anybody and just about anything to bring about confirmation of how he's leading us. So I'm glad Moses listened.
Yeah.
Because God was going to bring it about another way if he didn't listen to Jethro.
One way or another.
He would have done it.
God would have done it, right?
He would have done it.
He's going to care for his people.
And you?
Yeah. Those things that you mentioned, I think the one other thing that I was thinking about in terms of, am I going to receive that advice well, is the person giving it, I'm going to look at their life too. If they are not living, in a sense, by their own advice, then why would I want to heed theirs? If they are giving advice and their life is an absolute train wreck, and they are living by the advice that they're giving, again, I'm probably not going to receive that real well.
Yeah.
Because if I can look at your life and the advice that you're giving me, I see you trying to play out, and it's an absolute mess. I'm like, why would I do that?
Yeah.
And so,
you think it's going to work for me?
Right,
it's not working out for
It's not
you.
working so well for you.
It's true.
No, we're not going to go down that road.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. You mean not do as I say, not as I do?
Oh, I heard that. My mom used to say that to me all the time.
My daddy. Yep. He would flat out look at me and say, I know I do that, but do as I say, not as I do. And I'm like, okay then. All right. Well, let's do what the word says, even though it's difficult, because we'll see God's hand of blessing when we follow him.
Yeah.
We will see his contentment, I hope, and his peace as we trust him. Moses, bless him. We know it wasn't always peaceful for him.
No.
But he always sought God, and it was always for the care of God's people. It's pretty amazing.
It is.
What you see happening there in Exodus 18. Encourage you, go read Exodus 18. See what God will teach you from this passage. We're grateful you're here today. Thanks for being our +1. You can connect with us at DonnaandStevePlus.com. And we appreciate your time. And subscribe. Would you share it?